Hey, today's morning medicine is Cantharis, which is the Spanish fly, which they say causes helps. They use the Spanish fly. They say is a what do they call it? Aphrodisiac, which Cantharis does have the symptomology or the symptoms when proven, like they did with all this stuff I have on the board. Uh, it has the ability to create sexual excitement. So, we all know that. And it's good for bladders, burning, any kind of burning, and urine problems, and sexual mania, and all that kind of stuff. So, could have been good for a lot of these predators, I guess you'd say. People who are overly sexually excited. You give them some Cantharis, that could help settle it down. So don't forget, like Spanish fly, you give it to some, you take it as an aphrodisiac, makes you uh, horny, excites you, and that is physically given. Now you give it homeopathically, and it can basically take care of the over sexually stimulated person. And of course, anybody that having bladder problems, kidney problems, a lot of urine problems. So it's good for the sex and the urine areas, the lungs, all kinds of areas like that. So commonly known as Spanish fly, Cantharis belongs to the animal kingdom. So they make it out of, what's it say? Triturate, tincture or trituration of living insects. So they take that insect, that Spanish fly, and they make a medicine out of it. The animal kingdom and finds its most prominent sphere of action is exciting the animal passions. So that's what they find. So you make a tincture out of it, you give it to somebody, and it they stimulates their sexual desires. There is anger in every acute degree, so it also stimulates the anger. Someone who's very angry, you give Cantharis, and that could help settle that down also. Exciting the animal passion. There's anger in a very acute degree, amounting to paroxysms of rage. So, anybody that has a lot of anger issues and rage, you might want to consider Cantharis and a corresponding condition of the bodily tissues. So, you know, um, when they say that a corresponding, like you got an angry blister or an angry, the burning and the cutting in the urethra, and that is like an angry situation there. In burns, so good for burns on the skin. These are scalds and burns, not what are they, third degrees, I would imagine. The part may be treated with a lotion containing a few drops or pills, which is sugar tablets of the Cantharis, 30C or 200C to an ounce of water. A dilution being given internally, so you can give it internally for burns, and at the same time put some homeopathically, or you could do the tincture on, mixed with water on the actual burn. An ointment made with 3 eggs is a good application for herpes zoster. What is herpes zoster? That's shingles. So anybody having, if you have that herpes zoster, it's a skin eruption that is burning and cutting, and just, you can use Cantharis uh, ointment. You can make a salve out of it and apply it to it, and that would help take care of the burning in that. There's a few medicines that can be good for that, but what was it? I think Russ Tox is another one. I don't know about it externally, but internally Russ Tox. So H.N. Guernsey, a homeopath, observed that Cantharis is almost always the remedy for whatever other sufferings there may be when there is the well frequent urination with burning cutting pains. So if they got skin stuff and their urinating is affected with cutting and burning pains, you would consider Cantharis. If you have stomach issues and you got that urine stuff, you'd Cantharis. Trying to think of some other issues, but whatever issues you have, it would be matched up with cutting, burning in the urethra and all that down there. If the cutting pains attend to the flow, so the cutting pains being with the flow of the urine, even when urinating is not very frequent. So even if they have, they can either have dysuria, which is constant urination, or they could uh, dribble. It could dribble out and not have it. It even says in one point, it says like hot molten steel, so that's how much it burns. So whether it's frequent or whether it's not very frequent, either way, Cantharis could be utilized for this urination problems. Burning stitches, shooting pains, and exudation are the indication. Exudation is, like say in the lungs, exudation would be a lot of mucus, a lot of, pleurisy in the lungs, a lot of fluid and stuff. So, and the pains are burning, stitching, and shooting. So, and cutting, they also have cutting in there. So the fly blister treatment of olden days, so they would take that fly and put it on blisters, I would imagine, to get rid of them, had more to say for itself than those who used it knew. So this is like folklore, and that's what I'm reading right now is the folklore. When they used that Spanish fly for blisters and stuff, it was a great indication of what this remedy is for. Uh, Vesication is the keynote. That's vesicles, eruptions on the skin, just like shingles. I was trying to think it's herpes zoster, but it's just like shingles. But vesication is a keynote of its effects on the skin and indicates its use in burns of the first degree. First degree burns. So it is great for first degree burns. I was thinking more third degree burns than that, but definitely for first degree burns. Application topically with water and the remedy in there and internally. Erysipelas and blisters. And these all have cutting and burning pains. Any blisters, erysipelas, so all kinds of skin irritations is great for this. And the vesication is fluid, uh, fluid blisters with fluid in it. The word irritation best expresses the totality of the Cantharis effect. So it's very irritating to the lungs, to the skin, to the urinary tract, to the sexual organs, all that. Cantharis attacks the urinary and sexual organs. That's a three, perverting their function and setting violent inflammation. So there's, you got all this inflammation down there, and it's very, um, what they say, the irritating. It's very irritating, causing frenzied delirium. So they're just like, they're out of their mind from all the irritation from this, whether it's urine, skin, lungs, wherever it is. Cantharis can produce an amorous frenzy, so over sexuality, unbounded sexual desire, also sexual weakness and excitability. So it can either be either way, sexual weakness, they can't perform, or overexcitedness. Like I said, a lot of this sexual crime can probably be helped with Cantharis. Consider it for like Epstein and those fellows. Guernsey also pointed out that Cantharis should be studied in treating disorders of the air passages when the mucus is tenacious, lots of mucus. Now it's a stringy, thick mucus because Calibic is considered with this medicine, and Calibic is Calibic has a hard time bringing it up. This mucus is tenacious and it's thick and stringy. Nash records a case in which this observation led him to, this Nash is a homeopath, led him to make a cure. Calibic, which is what I mentioned, had completely failed to relieve a lady who had suffered long from bronchitis. So he was given Calibic for bronchitis, wasn't working. And that's why I say, people think, oh, you give a homeopathic medicine, well, it should have just cleared it up. What happened? Well, there's few factors, the person taking the case, did they actually get to the root of what was going on? Did they miss something? Are they repertorizing the wrong situation? So he's doing Calibic with it. And like I said, there's like 4 or 5 remedies that could be for that thick mucus and all that in bronchitis. One day, the patient mentioned that she had great cutting and burning on urinating. That's why they say if there's that cutting, burning, and urinating and all that, and they got lung problems or they got bronchitis or they got and nothing's helping, you might want to consider Cantharis. So when he heard that cutting and burning when during urination, which she had obliged to do very frequently. So now she has this dysentery, they call, which is frequent urination with a lot of burning, cutting pains. Cantharis made a rapid cure. So that's why I say, this lady, that's the other end of it. This lady may not even have mentioned that she had this urinary problem. So you can only prescribe with what you get from a person. Some people may hide stuff. Some people may not even think about, yeah, oh, that's right. By the way, I have a lot of urination and I'm burning during that urination. This powerful drug produces a furious disturbance in the animal economy, simulating hydrophobia symptoms. What is ana? There's another remedy mentioned here, which would be considered with hydrophobia. There's a few of them for hydrophobia, but they have this Cantharis can produce, if you do it, you do approving homeopathy, can produce this hydrophobic symptoms, which is, lights bother them, water bothers them, they don't want to be near water, all that kind of stuff. Guernsey gives as the special, another homeopath, which I mentioned earlier, right? Yeah. Guernsey gives a special indication in hydrophobia. So with the bright light, can't take the bright light, the staring gaze, the fear of water and all that, moaning and violent cries interspersed with barking. It's like a dog. So there's that barking. There's barking with someone who having hydrophobia. So there's a few medicines for hydrophobia. So if you had one that was, didn't like the water, didn't like, bright lights and all that kind of stuff, um, but they were barking like a dog, you'd go to Cantharis, and then there's a few other ones that have different symptoms of it, and with hydrophobia, you'd consider those ones. Cannabis or Cantharis. I just got done with all the cannabises and the cannabis sativa, cannabis indica. We did marijuana on Thanksgiving. Um, Cannabis sativa, which is hemp, on the day after, and now we're into Cantharis. We're of course going alphabetically. Spanish fly, inflammation violently acute. So any inflammation that all of a sudden comes on, acute is just sudden onset. Uh, and inflammation, of course, is swelling and all that, and irritation and all kinds of things like that. Uh, Burning, what does it say? I'm gonna wipe that out with the marker. But anyways, it causes burning, I think is what I'm trying to say there. Pain or cutting. So these are all threes: inflammation, burning, pain or cutting, some kind of cutting pain, burns and scalds. It's good for. Coffee aggravates this person. They don't want coffee at all. Constant urge to urinate. That's a three. All these are threes basically. Sexual excitement. That's a three. Uh, Pain during that sexual excitement. So man gets an erection and it's very painful for them. You would consider Cantharis. Hemorrhages, bleeding, whether the lungs or the urinary stuff, or even the stools, any bleeding coming out of their nose, whatever. You'd consider Cantharis with the hemorrhaging. Could be skin too. Dysuria, which is urinating, frequent urination, lots of urine coming out. They're just dispelling urine like crazy. And that's it. Okay. So better rubbing. So, any area that's painful or hurting, it's better by rubbing. Warm applications make it better. And all this stuff ends in rage. So any kind of burning and all this stuff, they just get mad. Everything they do ends in rage. Worse, urinating, drinking cool water. So they don't, the pain is worse urinating. And when they drink cold water, it aggravates the stomach and that. Mind, acute mania being, they're very talkative, they're very excitable, and that can be a sexual mania. So that's why I say some of these people that have crimes from sex, rape or whatever they're doing, uh, Cantharis should be considered for that. So this acute mania can be either mental or it can be sexual, which is both. The sex always comes from the thoughts. Rage with crying. So they're very angry. These people are angry people. Any anger symptoms, anybody having anger symptoms, one of the medicines would be Cantharis. Sudden loss of consciousness, so they can pass out with a red face. So there's the blood's rushing, to the face and that and the head, and they pass out. They can have, they can sudden loss of consciousness. That's a 3 too. The acute mania is a 3. Pain in loins with increased desire to urinate. So they got all this pain down there, and it should be a burning, cutting pain. Burning in intestinal tract. So there's that burning in this, when they're in the back end. Not only when they urinate, they burn, but when they're having a lot of burning in the intestinal tract. Emprostotonus. I guess I said that right. But the back is bent. They're bent forward. They can't move. Now sulfur has that stooped shoulder. They can't straighten up. And opisthotonus, which is bent backwards. Person's bent is, back is bent really bad backwards. Uh, where is that? Oh, pain in loins with desire to urinate. So this bending backwards and bending forward, either way, that it's an extreme sense. They just it's not. It's almost like an epileptic situation where they bend backwards. When I looked it up, the person's just stiff as a board, bent with their back, their head down, their feet down, and their back bent up. Or it can be the other way. Pain in loins with desire to urinate. So there's a lot of pain, and they got to constantly be urinating. Pain in the chest, better by belching. So I always say that when I have disturbances in the gastric sense and they got a headache or something, is it a gastric headache? Where is it coming from? That pain in the chest when they burp, it feels better, So there's always a pressure from a lot of gas and stuff. Burning in the chest, stitching at sternum, so stitching pains, which is sharp pains. Pleurisy, any pleurisy situations, you consider bryonia, calicarb, and how do you finish that medicine? I can't remember right now. Squill and Cantharis. Bryonia, calicarb, squilleus, I forget what it is, but Cantharis. So these ones for pleurisy. So that's why I say when you looking up a medicine, you will find a bunch of different medicines there, and then you have to determine through modalities what makes it feel better, what makes it feel worse, what's the cause. All kinds of things like that will help you to find, like bryonias, worse by motion. They want to sit still. Thinking calicarb, I don't know. Sensation of air in the ears, coming from the ear. So it feels like air is just rushing out of the ear. Bones are painful in the ear. Capsicum, which is another burning red. Capsicum is that hot sauce. What is it? Capsicum. What is that? I forget what that pepper is called. Hot pepper, anyways. But it has that painful bones. You didn't think of capsicum and Cantharis when the bones are very painful in the ear. The ear is hot coming out of the ear. Objects look yellow. Santa, I forget what that medicine is too. I'd have to look it up, but that's another one with Cantharis for that. Objects, when they're looking at, they see objects look yellow. Fiery sparking in the eyes. So there's like sparks. They're seeing sparks basically. Staring look with burning in the eyes. So the eyes are burning also, and they're staring off into space, basically. Pale, wretched, death-like. The face is pale, it's wretched, it's death-like. It can have a yellowish tint, I would imagine, too. But hot and red. The face is hot and red. Belladonna, that would be a belladonna situation, and a few others. Itching vesicles. So any itching vesicles, you'd consider Cantharis. And burning of the face. So, retained placenta in a female, a woman has a baby and the placenta is not fully out, you'd consider sepia and Cantharis to flush that out. with painful urination. So they got this placenta in there, the urination, and especially with the urination, that's Cantharis. Sepia can be considered in that situation. Nymphomania, platina would be another one with nymphomania. They've got, this hypersexual sexuality of a person. It's not normal. We think, oh, I'd love to, have sex all the time. Well, after a while, you get tired of it. Leukorrhea with sex desire. So this woman has a discharge all the time, and they're always having sexual desires with that. A lot of itching, and that itching can lead to masturbation because they're down there scratching, and they get excited, and next thing you know, it's on. Cutting, burning pain in the vagina and all that area, and that can be the bladder and the cystitis. A bladder, which is anyways, cystitis, nephritis for the kidneys. So all this stuff's going on, and there is burning in the uh, vagina area and all that. Coffee aggravates a person. They don't like coffee at all. That's a 3. Disgust for everything. So they can have a disgust for all food, water, whatever. Unquenchable thirst. Even though they don't, if they're in the hydrophobia state, they don't want water, but they have this unquenchable thirst. But they have these aversions of fluids, so they need to drink because they have this great thirst, but they don't they don't like fluids. They're averse to them. Burning in brain as if boiling water. So there's that burning again, and it's in the brain. Head heavy, aches. So that's like a lot of these medicines. When you think of, like, burning, any burning, you think of Cantharis. What else is burning? Trying to think of some burning remedies. And there's a lot of them, like apis is bee, which is stinging. You'd have stinging, you'd think of apis. Burning, you'd think of Cantharis. I think arsenicum, yeah, arsenicum's burning. Um, Aconite, not so much, but it has some burning. But arsenicum, big on burning, along with Cantharis. And like Arctica urens is more stinging. Uh, Apis is more stinging. All right, I better keep going. Heavy aches from bathing or washing. So there's that aversion to water. Loss of hair on combing. So they're having alopecia there. Palpitations of the in the heart, and the pulse is very feeble. You can barely feel it, but they have palpitation. Pericarditis, which is swelling and irritation of the sacs around the heart. Tendency to syncope, which is fainting. All right, cystitis, which is the bladder. Intolerable tenesmus. Tenesmus means they never feel like they're done urinating. They're always got this constant desire. These are all 3s. Big kidney and bladder remedy. Urine, burning, scalding, cutting pains, intolerable urging. So they're always going to go and it just can't take it anymore. Urine pass drop by drop. So they can either be urinating a lot, or they can have this tenesmus or this constant desire, but it's passing drop by drop. And they even say when them drops pass, it's like it burns so much, it's like molten steel. Knees totter, ascending stairs. So going upstairs is very hard for these people. Their knees give way. Ulcerative pain in soles. Cannot step. So anybody having those, interesting. And I try to get from my wife from that bump on her foot, what kind of pain is it? Is it burning? Is it stinging? Is it stabbing? She just says aching. She doesn't come up with it. Feels like walking on a pebble, she says. So anyways, ulcerative pain in soles, cannot step on the soles of the feet. This might be when I might just consider giving her and see what happens. Tearing pains in the limbs. No liver. Voice is low and weak. Now this is in the lungs. So their voice is not very strong. Tenacious mucus in air passages. Pleurisy with exudations. Exudation is just fluid. Fluid leak out of blood vessels. That's, into the lungs. Um, dyspnea, which is they can't catch their breath. That's probably why their voice is low. Palpitations in the heart, of course, again. Frequent dry cough with blood-streaked tenacious mucus. So the mucus will have some blood streak, and that could be bronchitis, tuberculosis, could be a bunch of different situations. Syncope again, they're passing out because uh, they're not getting the air they need, and so they're passing out. Painful dysuria in the breast. This is with the breast. Dysuria is a lot of when they have breast problems and they're having the urinary dysuria is a lot of urination. Uh, the breasts are painful and it has that urination stuff you would consider Cantharis. So everything that's whether it's painful breast, voice weak, or lungs problems, or kidney problems, or you know, any of these kind of situations, it always will have a lot of urination with it. Painful swelling of down in the male parts, burning urethra, strong sex desire, that's a 3. Painful erection, so the Spanish fly would cause strong sex desires given uh, physically, and it would help with strong sex desires given in other words even it out given homeopathically. Painful erections, gonorrhea with priapism, which is prolonged erection. So they have gonorrhea, and that probably a lot of the urinary stuff going on. But priapism is painful erection. So they have these painful erections, strong desire. So there's a lot of urinary tract stuff, sexual part of the individuals. It really affects. Tongues covered with vesicles, deeply furred. The tongue is deeply furred, got I guess it's a white fur on it, and with red edges. So you're always looking at the tongue, see what's going on. Burning in the mouth, pharynx, and throat. So there's that burning. Burning is big. Mouth, pharynx, throat, burning in the intestines, burning in the probably the chest, the lungs. And this is good for can be good for lockjaw, one of the medicines. Nose, nothing. Rectum, shivering with burning. So when they have stools, they're like they get the shivering and it's burning down there with the stools. Scraping of intestines, shreddy, burning stools. So there's that burning stools and the intestines feel like they're just being scraped. Burning tenesmus and shuddering after stool. So there's burning. Tenesmus means they never feel like they're done. Shuddering after they have a stool, and there's blood in it. Burning and scalds on the skin. Any kind of burns or scalds, even it says to a first degree burn, you would consider Cantharis right away. All these burn patients, you would want to consider in a hospital given Cantharis. Rawness and smarting, worse cold applications followed by inflammation, severe sunburn it can be good for. Vesicular eruptions on the skin, erysipelas, which is another skin thing, with restlessness. A lot of restlessness with this skin irritations. Burning in soles of feet at night. Burning, that's why I say a lot of any burning, you would right away think of this Cantharis and a few other ones. Burning in esophagus and stomach, carboveg, or yeah, carboveg. Yeah, carboveg would probably be, would be burning in esophagus and stomach. Violent burning is a 3. Violent retching and vomiting, worse pressure. They don't want pressure on their stomach. Temperature chilly as if cold water poured over them. So it feels like they had cold water poured on them. Cold hands, feet, cold sweat. So when they sweat, they have cold. Feel like uh, they're cold, but they're sweating. Oh, this chilly with cold water poured over them during a stool. That's what gives them that shivering. So it feels like there's cold water poured over them when they're going to the bathroom having a stool. Great difficulty swallowing liquids. That's a 3. And there's a few remedies that could be for that. Tenacious mucus, calibic. So calibic along with Cantharis would be considered. Spasms when larynx is touched. So they want the larynx touched. That sounds like a lachesis situation. Vertigo worse in open air. Man, that went quicker than I thought. All right, let's get to some readings. There's a lot here, so I might go a little over. The pains are burning and sharp. Sharp along the course of the nerves. Now that sounds like hypericum. Neuralgia of head and face from taking cold with loud screams and jerking of the muscles. And like I say, when there's a time there's nerve pain, hypericus, but Cantharis could be another one. The slightest touch or approach aggravates the mental symptoms. That sounds like arnica. They don't want to be touched. They just had a great injury. They back off, don't touch me. Violent spasms reproduce by touching larynx. So they touch the larynx and they have these spasms in there. There is also worse from dazzling objects and by water. So this is the completing the hydrophobia picture. So that's that hydrophobia. They don't like dazzling objects, bright objects, and water. It acts on the brain, producing inflammation of the tissues. So a lot of inflammation with this, even in the brain. The eyes are bright, pupils widely dilated, erysipelas commencing in the nose. So they got skin irritation starting in the nose. The face is generally pale or yellowish, and that yellowish can be kidney stuff, with an expression of deep-seated suffering. This is diphtheria, inflammation of throat. Oh, there is diphtheria. So diphtheria is a infection. Inflammation of the throat, so any of that with severe burning, constriction, thirst with aversion to drinking. So that's a big keynote for Cantharis. They have this great thirst, but just can't drink. They can't swallow. Uh, there's a severe burning and constriction in the throat. The stomach is inflamed, pain in abdomen, colic like doubling. So they double over like colic, like they have colic. The patient doubling the patient up, cutting, burning, lacinating. All these are, would be pains they're having, no matter where it is. Dysenteric stools, so that's from dysentery, bad water, with tenesmus. Never feel like the diary is done. They can't get away from the toilet. In the genital urinary region, the most intense action is developed. So all the urination stuff. There is extreme superficial sensitiveness in the hypogastrium, which is the abdomen area, the lower part on the right or left, especially when the bladder is full. So when the bladder is full, they got this pain there. Very sensitive. Attended with unbearable tenesmus of bladder. So always the constant feeling they got to go. Cutting, burning pains from the kidney down to the urethra. So a lot of cutting and burning. Stranguary, which means urine doesn't pass, can only pass a few drops like molten lead. And that's why I said it's like molten lead burning when they urinate. Irritation of all grades, any kind of irritation. The sexual appetite is aroused in the point of mania. So that's why I say it might be good for a lot of these sexual predators to help settle that down. Sex does not always reduce it. So even they have sex, they still have this sexual mania. On the skin and serous membranes, the irritating effect of the remedy are equally pronounced. So a lot of skin irritations. Pleurisy with effusion, pleurisy with fluid release has been cured by the remedy given internally. Cantharis has cured a case of malarial cachexia. So this is malaria, in which the symptoms were always worse when the urine was scanty. So when they couldn't urinate in malarial symptoms, Cantharis would be considered. Burning runs through the Cantharis pathogenesis, so burning anywhere, in a very striking way. Another marked feature of the remedy is its effects on the increasing the secretion of membranes, so a lot of mucus out of whatever membranes. Cantharis expels moles, this is a big 3 on this, dead fetus, placenta, and promotes fecundity. All that means is it increases fertility. So Guernsey says this. If people are having a hard time conceiving, you would consider Cantharis to help that. And there's a few other ones for this, but all right, I'm over. So that's Cantharis today, and tomorrow is capsicum, which is was considered with this. Capsicum has burning too, and that is the cayenne pepper. I couldn't think of the name. So cayenne pepper is tomorrow. Today was Cantharis, the Spanish fly, good for a lot of burning, just as capsicum will be tomorrow. So, all right, that's morning medicine. You can age, but you don't have to get old, depending on what you eat and how you move and your stress levels.